So let me just let me just find my sorry, man, one sec here. Okay, there we go. So continuing with the responses. So I just remember the text bigger, a bit too small. Okay, so just a refresher on some of the things. When to answer our main, you can answer our main during davening. When to answer our main, you can only answer our main and other responses at certain points in the davening. If you're not in the middle of a prayer, uh, where that ends with Baruch Atah Hashem, then you can't uh, interrupt it. You can't interrupt the Shema. Um, it says here you can only interrupt the Shema and you get unless or the Amidah if it's an absolute need. I don't know what that actually means. It doesn't give an example, but generally speaking, don't. Then the response of Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo, like if someone when they do the Chazarat Hashat, the repetition, and they say the Baruch Atah Hashem, then you say Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo, where you usually the person that's uh, doing the repetition or in Shacharit. Um, it's basically it's permissible to answer if also when you're not interrupting when you're not in the middle of the Amidah or the Shema. So I think that is we'll do Kedusha tomorrow another time. That's just two of the things. So if you're in the middle of an important um, a section of prayer where it has a bracha or the Amidah or the Shema, don't respond. That's the benchmark or the default.
Okay. Thank you. You must find out for what reasons you can't. I'm assuming a number two is a good reason. All right. Just going to share the screen. Lance, I just want to share with you a Mishnah that you missed the other day. So, if the iron axe head slipped from its handle when he was chopping and killed a bystander, Rebbi said he is not exiled, but the sages say he is exiled. Now, what Gavin Simpson mentioned the other day is we don't know Rebbe's position when you read the first part of the Mishnah, because does Rebbe say that the reason the perpetrator is not exiled is because it's almost bordering on an accident, or do we say it's because he's grossly negligent and doesn't deserve the protection from the Goel Adam, the victim's relatives, nor allow the atonement virtue of the city of refuge? So that is why we have the second um, paragraph of the Mishnah, because it lets us know exactly where Rebbe is holding. So if the death was caused by a wood chip ejected from the tree that was being chopped, Rebbe says he is exiled, but the sages say he is not exiled. So what we covered, Lance, bottom line, is that Rebbe, um, if the sages say that he's exiled when the axe head flies off the handle, it means they see it as an accident, and therefore you're entitled to the atonement of the city of refuge and protection from the Goal Hadam, which is why it's called the exiled city or the city of refuge specifically. So they're entitled to protection if it's board, if there is a degree of negligence, but if it's certainly not grossly negligent, he has the atonement aspect and the protection. Rebbe says the reason he's not exiled is because it's bordering on gross negligence. Because you should have checked. How do we know that? Only from the second part, which says that as far as Rebbe is concerned, if you are chopping a tree and a piece of wood is ejected from that tree and kills somebody, the reason why you're exiled in that case is that's not negligent, but a Jew has died, and on that basis, they're entitled to protection from the victim's relatives and they're entitled to the atonement aspect. It's not totally lacking any negligence because if ever you do a dangerous activity or potentially hazardous activity in a public space, there is a degree of negligence associated with that. But the sages say he's not even exiled at all because if you're hitting a tree and a piece of wood comes off, your equipment is intact, and then that's almost a freak accident. Okay, Lance, are you with us now? Okay, let's get on with it. Now, where is everybody there? Somebody seems to be. No, we have a full house. Okay. All right, so let's get into this very, very quickly. The case of the woodchopper's accident debated by Rebbi and the sages is mentioned, and it's mentioned in the pasuk in Devarim chapter 19 verse 5, which is Deuteronomy. I'm just going to share that pasuk with you. Give me 1 second. All we have is Sepharia. So Sepharia, it's the only thing we have. Hey Kevin, you would like that pun. It's up your alley. All right, guys,
I
can
didn't get
everybody
it.
see the screen? Guys, can you all see the screen? Quick, I want to actually fly through this.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
go
good.
ahead.
So, for instance, a man will go with another fellow into a grove to cut wood. You can call a grove like an orange grove, where it's almost agricultural, or a forest, it doesn't matter. But it's a place where more than one person can go. It's a public arena. You can think of it like a park or a picnic place. As his hand swings the axe to cut down a tree, the axe head flies off the handle and strikes the other so that he dies. The man shall flee to one of these cities and live. Okay. Now, what's going to be discussed here is the interpretation of what does the word ha'etz mean, and is it nashal or v'nishal? And they've got two different implications from the pasuk. So we're not going to go on the English translation. We're just going to say, look, let's look at the Hebrew and see what it could possibly be. So the Stonehouse edition, Chumash, or whatever it's called, says, or whoever comes with his fellow man into the forest to chop wood, and his hand slipped with the axe as he chopped the tree, or the iron flew from the wood and found its fellow man, and he died, he shall flee to one of those cities and live. Okay, so Rebbe and the sages basically disagree over the exact circumstances over which this Chumash speaks. Now, this is the view of the sages. They look at this term nashal as intransitive, and that actually refers to the iron axe head, okay, coming off the handle and killing somebody. So guys, I'm gonna ask. Do any of you know the difference between intransitive and transitive before I go on? Or can I tell you? You know, you
I
don't know.
moved 40
No, tell
years.
me.
I moved 40 years ago.
Okay. So basically, the word transitive um, has to be close to a direct object for the verb to make sense. So, in other words, if I'm saying I'm holding, to say I'm holding doesn't mean I'm holding at a spiritual level. It means I'm holding what? Am I holding a cell phone? Am I holding books? Am I holding a chair? That verb only makes sense when it is referring to an object which you're holding, like a noun. So transitive is much more direct. And intransitive means it's indirect. So intransitive and transitive is the difference between grammar, which is indirect and direct in terms of liability. So that's why they're using this particular term. So when you basically, as far as the sages are concerned, if they're using this word nashal, it's basically intransitive. Why? Because if you're holding an axe by its handle and the metal part comes off, the head comes off, you know what you're holding on to. It's not guesswork, it's direct. And therefore, they're using this term nashal. Now, the thing of it is, according to Rebbe, nashal is basically talking about the effect that the axe handle has on the wood of the tree. So it's not only the word nashal that comes into question, it's the word of how do you translate mina'etz? In other words, there's a brisa and it says, look, if you have to look at it, Rebbe's opinion to the sages is, does the verse say, and the iron slipped from its wood? Because it basically has to have a possessive adjective to refer to where it's coming from. If you say the handle, the axe head came from its handle or from its wood, then it would clearly refer to the axe handle. So it says, don't work on the translation here. If you want to refer to the term ha'etz, it actually just means the wood. And it doesn't have any indication that the wood actually means handle. And he uses this word va'od, and he's using a gezerah shavah from the pasuk, and it says, look, if you want to have this word eitz, it could mean that he chopped the tree, and it's only on the basis of that wood that's flying off the tree that has a certain degree of negligence because it's dangerous to do that activity in the public, but it's not so grossly negligent where the axe handle comes off the wooden part. So, so he said it's actually referring to the tree being chopped, and they want to make a comparison of its wood or the wood. So they use that and nashal versus nashal. So they're using both the noun as well as the adjective to be able to describe where they see the liability goes. So again, the Gemara says, look, how do they interpret these two particular words? As far as Rebbi is concerned, he said it's the ramification of the wood chip flying off. As far as the sages are concerned, it's the handle flying off. Now, I think it was Gavin Simpson that the other day was talking about, or was it you, Lance, that said, listen, if you're chopping a tree, kind of how are you responsible? Because you could check the axe handle in the beginning. So how does Rebbi argue that it's grossly negligent? Because you wouldn't obviously feel it being loose. You'd keep chopping, and at a certain point it would loosen, not be loose. So why would Rebbi say that's grossly negligent? Who asked that? Was it Gavin Simpson or Lance?
Probably Gavin.
Gavin, was it you?
I think it was me.
Yeah. So we're saying that's you holding by the sages. They're saying it's not a case of the axe handle just coming off from the axe head, because even they would deem that would be gross negligence. Do you get what I'm saying? Providing they're witnesses. The one advantage is you kill somebody, they can't testify against you. So they would say it's liable for exile and the atonement aspect. But the point of it is, if you have to do a proper atonement, Hashem would know how grossly negligent it is. But the sage's default position is that it's not that grossly negligent because you would feel it coming off, and therefore it would have to be after a couple of chops that it loosens. As far as Rebbi is concerned, even that is a problem because you should make sure nobody's either in the area, or after you hit each one, you just check. You don't go at it profusely if there could be anybody there. So the Gemara basically wants to know, like, how come they interpret the verse differently? Because Rav Chia Bar Ashi said in the name of Rav, both Rebbi and the sages derive their opinions from the same verse. So it looks at the word Vanashal Abrizel Mina Eitz. So Vanashal, the iron from the wood, obviously means the axe head from the handle. Sorry, the wood from the tree. But if you're using the word Vanashal, it's implicit that it's the axe head from the wood. So the wood, as far as the sages are concerned, is pretty straightforward. That the wood means the head from the handle. As far as Rebbe is concerned, it should have read with the word Vanisha, which means from its wood, meaning that's the only way to interpret it's for sure the axe head that would have a limited amount of liability, and therefore he says it's actually the chips that fly. It's indirect. So where they're actually arguing is on the basis of, is it assigned to the tradition that we have on verbal pronunciation or written pronunciation? So where the sages subscribe to is that it's the pronounced form of the word, and from there you can see that it has a possessive adjective referring to the axe head and the axe handle. As far as Rebbe is concerned, it would appear that he subscribes to the written form, which is basically the wood, which could mean either the handle, but in most likelihood, the shards of chips that come off the tree. Otherwise, it would have been possessive. So the one problem with that is Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosel said in the name of Rav Yochanan, there's a problem because we clearly know that Rebbi, Rav Yehuda ben Karetz, Bei Shammai, Rav Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, they're all of the opinion that primacy is assigned to the pronounced form. So therefore, if the Gemara previously suggested it's from the written form, then you can see why he's got a different opinion to the sages. But there's a tradition from Moshe at Hasina that there's an interpretation of how the word is analyzed compared to how it's pronounced. So we say, well, how would he disagree with the sages? So then it said that what would actually happen is Rebbe is using two different points of evidence. He's using a Gezerah Shava with the word for which means furthermore, and he's using, which is based on the written interpretation, and he uses the Gezerah Shava as proof, and yet he holds according to the pronounced form. So what Rebbe has actually done here is he said, look, I need to give an answer that would suit both points of view. Whether you're seeing it as the pronounced form or the written form, I have to give you evidence of both. So even if I subscribe to the pronounced view, it's all very well and good, but my argument has to be on both ways. And he's saying that the minute it mentions a generic the wood, it's basically intransitive, which means it's the ramifications of the axe handle on the tree and wood shards fly. The minute you're looking at the sages, where it's using the term, it would have to, according to Rebbe, be the possessive adjective referring to its wood, meaning not only the handle of the axe head, but also also it would have to be transitive in the sense that it has to say, well, basically, what are you talking about? Just like you say, well, I'm holding something. In this particular case, you'd have to be referring to holding an axe as opposed to just a verb of chopping. Do you get what I'm saying? So, before we go into one or two other things, are there any questions so far? I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. I've saved you pages, trust me, of interpretation of this word and that. So we've got two arguments going on. The one is do we work on the pronounced interpretation or the written interpretation? And Rebbe says, I have to give you an argument for both the written and pronounced, because people know I personally view it from the pronounced. And my view is it has to refer to wood chips because it's not possessive of its wood, where it's talking about an axe head and the handle. And the sages are saying that it's referring to the wood, which could be implying both. And then it doesn't need to have a transitive verb. Does everybody see the argument? Aidan?
How's it possible for just the wood to fly out of your hand
Okay, so
and not like the head?
no. So
Yeah,
that's exactly what they're saying. So they're saying as follows, right? It's a good question. I need to make it clearer. So I've got an axe here. I'm holding a wooden handle, and therefore the head that's here, I still retain the handle. So when we say its wood, we're referring to the axe head and its handle. The axe head doesn't have wood that belongs to it. The only thing that belongs to the axe head is the handle. So if we're saying the axe head, its wood, it's referring to part of the axe, meaning the handle that belongs to the axe head. If you want to interpret from the wood, you can say it could be the handle or it could be the wood that comes off as you chop the tree, the splinters that come off the wood or the shards.
So you're saying if it's the axe, then the entire axe flies and
No,
hits
we're
somebody.
saying that the person didn't check the head was secure. And therefore, according to the rabbis, even the rabbis would say if the head came off immediately, that's gross negligence, because any idiot should check that that's secure before you take your first strike. And the rabbis are saying, listen, exactly as your uncle said, is that maybe it wasn't the first strike. You don't have to, every second they say, hit, check, hit, check. You'll be there all day. And therefore, that's considered, if it was fairly secure in the beginning, and after multiple dozen choppings, it loosened up. That is a bit of negligence, but it's negligence only insofar as the fact that you're doing it in a public place. But it is almost has an element of accidental attached to it. It's not purposeful. As far as Rebbi is concerned, is the reason it's bordering on gross negligence is that nobody should be around, because you're not going to check your axe after every strike, and therefore you'll be there all day. You've got to assume it's going to loosen after a period of time, and therefore that's grossly negligent. And therefore he said the only way that a person deserves exile in this case is if the shards from the tree, the wooden splinters, kill somebody, because that's like weird. That's really accidental. And that's no negligence. In fact, it hits a tree and chips flew off from the tree. So therefore, it's nothing loosening or any sort of negligence. It's the impact of the shards. So why should you go to exile at all? Because Rebbi said a Jew dies, you know it's a public place, and your life should be turned upside down, and you shouldn't be able to eat a chicken sandwich the next day just because, you know, just because it was an accident. Might have been an accidental component, but there was enough negligence to know you shouldn't do this in a public space. That's what he's saying. And there could be something. So, so certainly the sages are then saying if it's a wood chip, it's almost completely accidental. There's no liability whatsoever. But they're using their evidence on 2 points. The one of the axe head from its wood, meaning from the handle that it comes with, and that's the sages of how they interpret that to be the axe itself and its respective handle. The wood is how Rebbi's
Oh, so
interpreting
the
it.
entire axe would be flying at somebody and
No,
killing them when it refers to the.
no. So
I'm so confused with the wood and the axe.
okay,
Like the
all right.
wood within the axe.
Okay,
I don't understand that.
no problem. So just let's focus on the axe head. The
Okay.
axe head is what's doing the killing. It's killing either by making direct contact with the tree and wood splinters off and kills somebody. So the axe head has created this to the tree, or the axe head flew off and hit somebody in the cranium and they died with brain trauma. Okay, the axe head caused the difference. The sages are saying that it's the handle that came off. And Rebbi is, in order for a person to get exile, and Rebbi is saying that the axe had to have hit the tree and the shard came off. So all we're focusing is on the axe head, not the axe handle. The evidence that the sages had that the axe head came off the handle is because it uses the word from its wood. Now, what wood does the axe head possess? Only the handle. It's only part of the handle. It's one tool. So therefore, the sages say if the head fell off the handle, off its wood, you're liable to exile. It's not grossly negligent. Because of what your uncle said, there were multiple strikes. It wasn't the first strike. That wasn't gross negligence. According to Rebbi, it doesn't use the word its wood, meaning referring to the axe head and the handle separating. It's referring to the axe head impacting in the tree. And therefore, it says from the wood that comes from the axe head after it struck the tree. Does that make more sense?
Okay. Yeah. No, I
I'm
understand
talking
now.
to you
It's
right
just
now, just to see if I
I
didn't
realized which part I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So no, so I thought that the handle was flying at somebody and killing them,
No.
compared to the wooden chips flying off and killing them. But now I realize that it's just the axe head detaching from the handle compared to wooden chips flying off a tree and killing
Exactly.
somebody.
So the
Okay.
reason
Okay.
the
Great.
reason why the sages see it as the axe head flying off is it said it's detached from its wood, which is the handle. They're detached.
Yeah. Okay.
Rebbi said the wood,
Yeah.
as the axe head hits the tree, the wood that comes from the tree. So it's the word
Okay.
versus the possessive its word. That's one. And the word venishal versus venashal. So what it means is that um, the one is possessive and the one is not. In other words, what are you holding? You're holding a book. The one implies the axe head implies the handle. The other one implies just general. The axe head made impact, and then the wood that came from it. So it's both the possessiveness of it, transitive versus intransitive, as well as the possessiveness. So it's an adjective that links them, and a transitive versus intransitive verb. That's it. Lance, you had a question.
I just want to check if just make sure that I understand everything. Either the axe head kills somebody or the wood chips kill somebody. If
Correct.
the axe head kills somebody, then you can go to the city of refuge because then you're not liable. Or you can go to the city of refuge because there was an accident because you multiple strikes and you had no. But if it was a wood chip, then you're completely innocent.
No, so you're correct that the sages would say that you're liable to exile um, for the axe head coming off because it holds like Gavin Simpson that it wasn't on the first strike that's loose and it's multiple strikes, and therefore there is negligence because there was another Jew there, but it's bordering on accidental. So there's negligence, but not gross negligence. As far as Rebbe is concerned, you don't go to exile either, but it's because it's grossly negligent, and it's you're only susceptible to having the protection from the city of refuge and the atonement from the wood chips. So, in other words, Rebbe is more stringent than the sages. That's what we're saying. So the sages
So the
would say
sages
there's no
say you,
exile even for the wood chips, whereas Rebbe says no, there is negligence. It's a public place. So you can get exile, and the sages say it's a complete accident, the wood chips. So just repeat it to me so I know you know it.
well, okay, so if it's the wood chips, it depends. So if it's the wood chips, then the sages will say that it's fine, you aren't liable. Rebbe will say you are still gross negligence. He probably goes to Chofetz Chaim.
uh, yeah, look, the sages are lenient. Obviously, it's a complete accident for wood chips as far as the sages, and there is culpability for a certain amount of negligence with the axe handle, but we don't deem it as being loose on the first strike. We deem it as what Gavin Simpson said multiple times, that you can't expect the oak to check his axe head every time he'll be there all day. But it does have a cumulative effect, and you do deserve exile because you deserve the atonement and protection from the family. It's not grossly negligent, but it's negligent in the sense that if you're in a public space, you're responsible if somebody dies and you're doing an act where it could have this ramification. As far as Rebbe is concerned, there's only exile from the wood chips, but if it's the axe handle from its wood, it's bordering on grossly negligent, and you don't get the protection from the Goel Adam, and you don't get the atonement. That's all. That's all he's saying.
I guess Rebbe still says you can get atonement for the wood chips.
Yeah, you can, but your life's going to be turned upside down because there's still a degree of negligence. Whereas the sages say it's so bordering on indirect, it's almost an accident. So there's no exile at all. The Goel Adam can't chase you. Your life isn't put upside down. It's so indirect.
Who do we hold by the sages?
We do hold by the sages, absolutely, Gavin. That's correct.
Because it's the more lenient approach, and it seems more logical and more fair. You know what I'm saying? The other one's a bit harsh.
Yeah, so let me just, we're almost done. Uh, so I'm just going to end off on this note. So the Gemara says, look, Rav Papa wanted to know that if somebody threw a clump of earth at a palm tree and he dislodges dates, and those dates proceeded to kill somebody, maybe we've arrived at the same sort of controversy between Rebbe and the sages in terms of the level of directness. So, because he's saying it's obvious that dislodging a date from a tree parallels the case of ejecting a wood chip from a tree. So, what is Rav Papa adding? So you can say, well, is he adding anything to this? And he is adding a certain aspect. And I've got a few minutes just to cover this, then we're done. Then we get onto a new Mishnah. He said, look, you might have said that dates are treated as a death as a result of a secondary force, and then not as one resulting from a primary force, and consequently, even Rebbe would exempt him from exile. And Rav Papa therefore makes it clear that there's no difference in the case of our Mishnah. So, what would you have come to thought without Rav Papa? Is that if I took a clump of earth, Aiden, and I threw it at a tree, then some dates fell off because it's left my hand, okay? Then it's indirect. I threw it, it could have hit the tree, it could have been like a stone that missed its mark, and it's so indirect. An axe handle from an axe head is much more direct because it loosened, as opposed to throwing a clump of earth. I don't know if I'm aiming, I don't think I'm hitting it that high, and then a palm falls off. So we could say that the cases are not parallel. So what Rav Papa is adding is that it is parallel. And what do we learn from Rav Papa? Is that even with that degree of one step removed, where you're not touching maybe even the tree that you hit with the axe handle, like here, you hit with the handle with the axe head, bang. It's directly linked to you, the axe handle in the head, and therefore it's direct. With a clump of earth, it's indirect. So you could say that Rebbe would say in that case, it's exempt like the wooden chip. So what we learn there is even though it's not holding the axe that hits the tree, and you're throwing a clump of earth, it's as direct, according to Rebbe, as if you were hitting a tree with a solid axe and an axe handle like this. Throwing a clump of earth is exactly the same. So that's something new that we learned because we'd say, listen, Kevin, just give me one sec. It's not direct. It's one thing to bang something, it's another thing to throw something. And according to Rebbe, there's the same degree of negligence. That's what we learned from Rav Papa. So then the Gemara says, well, then in what case would Rav Papa call it almost mildly negligent, but still to the degree that there's the city of refuge? In other words, there's an accidental component, but it's still negligent in a public place. He said if you threw it at the tree, and not that the date fell off from the shakiness of the tree, but you threw it at the tree, and then a branch came off with the tree, and it could have hit a number of branches, but it happened to hit one with the dates. The dates came off, clocked somebody in the head, and killed them. So that's indirect enough, even to Rebbe, to be deemed a complete accident at which there isn't even exile because it's that degree of accidental. We're done. Next Mishnah. Guys, I don't know if you've seen my pacing is 3 times as fast and we haven't lost any.
Shkach.
Yeah?
I wanted to make a comment. So Damon, but if a guy throws sand at a tree, what's the purpose? Why would he do that? Would that be for, could they look at what his intention is? Why did he? Because if it's hard enough and it causes a branch to dislodge or dates to dislodge and possibly kill someone, then why did he do that for?
So
Was
this
there
is,
constructive purpose for that?
even if there's no constructive purpose, there are people that have thrown little stones off bridges because they're bored. Or I think I once killed a duck. I went with Arthur. This was in 2003 to Emmarentia Dam or something, and I threw a dry bagel at it. I thought it would eat a bagel. I clocked it in the head, and the duck fell over, and its feet landed in the water. And I said to Arthur, "We got to leave." Um,
You had to duck, you mean?
no,
Very quickly.
no. So I'm saying my intent was to feed the duck. It wasn't to kill this thing, but it was like a frisbee, and it went bang, and it hit the duck, and suddenly it turned over, and the feet went in the air. And
It's
like, who's to know? So my intention with
it's
all the good direction in the world, the duck's dead.
but a
So
comment, Damon,
yeah,
sorry,
it didn't duck exactly. Yeah, as you say, Kevin.
if someone wants to use an axe and doesn't tighten the head and it causes a
Gross negligence.
homicide, then could you classify that person as a chop?
The person asking the question on the situation. All right. Guys, is this pace, just on a serious note, Kevin, is this pace too fast or is
No,
it
it's good. No, we are absorbing it. You're not
because
going
we're going at
it
twice
a
or
very
3 times the pace without going through a million commentaries. I've learned all the commentaries. I'm giving over a summation, and it takes a lot more work, but it means we can fly through. Is it helpful, guys? You want to
No,
slow
that's
a
good.
pace?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's,
You
it's
guys must tell me
it's
what's
better.
wrong.
It's better. We're covering a bit of ground, and it's a reasonable pace. Thank you.
Cool, cool. Aidan, Gavin Simpson.
Perfect.
Yeah, all
Right. If
good.
anything is to, and Aidan, thank you for telling me if something doesn't make sense because I don't know if I'm not describing it well. I appreciate it. Seriously. All right.
Thank you for like explaining it.
All right. Cheers, guys.
I
Have a good
fully get it
evening.
now. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.